Good evening, everyone. So last class we discussed about earthquakes and tsunami. So earthquakes are basically the vibrations felt near to the earth's surface due to the release of energy, and that can be due to plate movements, volcanic eruptions, landslide, land subsidence, meteoritic impact, mining, blasting, volcanic eruptions, and then reservoir induced seismicity. So that generates earthquakes. What do we call the study of earthquakes as? Seismology. The different types of earthquake waves. The point where energy is released is called as focus. The point nearest to the focus from the surface, focus is also called as hypocenter. There are two types of earthquake waves: body waves and surface waves. So surface waves are limited to the surface, generated due to the interaction of body waves with the surface. Body waves are generated from the focus, moves in all the direction. Body waves are of two types: P waves and S waves. Compression कौन सा है? Longitudinal कौन सा है? Transverse कौन सा है? S waves. ठीक है. Which one depends upon the rigidity of the material? Compressibility of the material. Density and compressibility, density and rigidity. Compressibility is P waves, rigidity is S waves. Since water is not rigid, that's why S waves will not travel through water. ठीक है? हाँ, P में rigidity है, S में हाँ rigidity भी है, compressibility भी है, but S majorly depends upon rigidity, rigid होना चाहिए. So S waves travels, P waves travels faster, S wave comes later. So because of the change in the direction of the P and S waves, there is a creation of shadow zones. S waves will not be detected after 105 to 105 degrees, S wave shadow zone. P waves are not detected between 105 to 145 degrees, that is P wave shadow zone. By using P waves, the shadow zones, the S waves, and the nature of the behavior, overall direction, the speed, we can come to conclusion about the Earth's interior. Okay? And talking about the different types of earthquakes: shallow, intermediate, and deep. In the different regions across the plate boundaries, wherever there are plate boundaries, there are earthquakes. Right? And measurement is done using intensity and magnitude. Recorded using, record कैसे करते हैं earthquakes को? The instrument is seismograph. The record is. So intensity, magnitude में energy कौन सा होता है? Which one measures energy? Magnitude. So which one measures the visible damage caused? Subjective is, objective is magnitude. So magnitude varies from one place to another, is that right? Intensity varies from one place to another, magnitude remains the same. Remain the same नहीं बोल सकते, magnitude is measured actually at the focus only. ठीक है? So हर जगह में तो measure नहीं करता magnitude को. Richter scale is used for intensity with scale. which is also called as modified Mercalli scale. So logarithmic scale कौन सा है दोनों में? It is every next unit is 10 times more than the previous unit. ठीक है. Among the important impacts of earthquakes, tsunami is the most important one. So in Japanese, tsunami means harbor waves. Harbor waves. So tsunami has 4 stages: generation, propagation in deep water, propagation in shallow water, and then landfall. Generation due to the vertical displacement of water column, that is caused by earthquake along normal and reverse fault, landslide, volcanic eruption, land subsidence, meteoritic impact, or underwater nuclear explosion. So once it is generated, it moves first in deep water, then in shallow water, then it makes a landfall. While moving in deep water, the depth is high, speed is high, amplitude is low. In shallow waters, the speed decreases due to decrease in depth, amplitude increases. Amplitude increases. So what do we call this effect as? Shoaling effect. Then finally makes landfall. ठीक है, यहाँ तक हुआ था, बताइए डाउट्स. Define what? Tsunami. Tsunami is that is what is we call it as seismic sea waves or harbor waves, the huge waves generated due to the vertical displacement of water column at the oceans. नॉर्मल से तो बहुत बड़ा सा बिग साइज वेव्स आ जाता है. दैट इज व्हाट इज सुनामी. ठीक है, एनीथिंग एल्स? ऑल क्लियर? ठीक है, सो लेट्स मूव ऑन टू द नेक्स्ट टॉपिक, एक्सोजेनेटिक मूवमेंट्स. Yes, surface waves are created due to the interaction of body waves with the surface. So this was geomorphology. तो हमने डिस्कस किया था स्टार्टिंग में. So we have covered till here. सुनामी तक हो गया. So when we are talking about Earth's movements, so I told you it is divided into two types. One is endogenetic, another one is exogenetic. Two types of movements which are generated from different source. One generated from the interior, it is called as endogenetic movements. Another from outside the surface, it is called as exogenetic movements. So फिर हमने यहाँ पर डिवाइड कर दिया. So यहाँ से लेके यहाँ तक जो भी बात हुआ है, it is all endogenetic. So all of these are due to the endogenetics only. The three important theories discussed about the reason behind the endogenetic movements. So what is causing these movements? And volcanism, geomagnetism, earthquakes, tsunamis, they are all result of endogenetic, majorly endogenetics. ठीक है? So we have a clear idea about endogenetic. है? Clear idea है? Let's talk about exogenetics. ठीक है? So what exactly are exogenetic movements? These are the movements on the surface of the earth but generated due to the forces acting outside the surface of earth. Okay, surface से बाहर से आ रहे हैं. These were generated from outside the surface of earth. but the impact is shown on the surface. Both endogenetic as well as exogenetic shows their impact on the surface only. Surface के ऊपर ही उसका impact रहेगा, but origin one happens from interior, another happens from exterior. The result is geomorphic process. The result of both the forces is geomorphic. मतलब geomorphic process is all the different changes which are continuously happening. So how do we define the surface? Surface क्या होता है? The part of the earth where we live. So in some regions there are mountains, other plateaus, plains. In some places there are very deep part of the oceans, trenches. Okay, there are ridges. Fine. ये सब कहाँ से आता है? These are all part of the surface only, right? This is all surface only. At one part there is oceanic crust, another part there is continental crust. There is so much of difference. This difference of topography on the surface is created by both outside the surface as well as inside the surface. Inside the surface के बारे में तो डिटेल में बात हो गया. Okay, they are caused by the plate movements, the sea floor spreading, the volcanic activity, earthquakes, tsunami, है ना, geomagnetism भी आ गया. So now let's talk about the forces from outside the surface which are trying to change the surface. For example, wind. So why there is a movement of wind? Because of difference of air pressure. Okay. So detail में बात करेंगे climatology में why exactly there is a movement of wind, what are the forces behind that. So अभी के लिए इतना समझो. Wherever there is a difference of pressure from one place to another, wind moves. Why there is a difference of pressure? Difference of temperature. Difference of temperature is due to the difference of heating mechanism. In one place the sun's rays fall vertically, it gets heated up. In another place the sun's rays falls obliquely, the temperature is low. Okay, temperature low है तो high pressure रहेगा, temperature high है तो low pressure रहेगा. The wind moves from high pressure to low pressure. So during the movement, the same wind, it erodes the land, it breaks down the land. The winds have that capacity to break down over a long period of time. Immediately तो नहीं. Continuously blowing wind will break down the surface. So it is continuously degrading the surface. Removal of material from one place will deposit the material in another place. Continuously there is a change which is happening from the surface. The sunlight causes the water to get evaporated. This evaporated water will fall down through precipitation. As it falls down to precipitation, wherever there is a slope, it will start to flow. We call it as river. The flowing water is river, right? As the river flows on the surface, it will erode parts of this and it will deposit somewhere else. What is the force? The sunlight is causing the water to get evaporate and fall down and move, and the movement is due to gravity. Gravitational force. Both acting from above. Right? The energy is derived from above the surface, but the impact is being on the surface. It is seen on the surface. The impact of endogenetic is also on the surface only, exogenetic is also on the surface. So in fact, both are trying to balance out each other. In a long run, endogenetics are balanced by exogenetics. Okay? So which one creates bigger landforms? Endogenetic or exogenetic? Endogenetic. Most of the mountains, plateaus, trenches, ridges, they are all created by endogenetics. So बड़ा size का तो landform बन जाएगा, but these big size landforms will get eroded and broken down over a period of time. It will get broken now. So we have seen Aravalis. Aravalis at one point of time it was taller than Himalayas. अभी तो दिखता भी नहीं है बहुत जगह में. It is eroded, it is broken down. Why it got uplifted? Due to the endogenetic forces. Maybe there might be some kind of collision, compression. It is a fold mountain, maybe there was a compression long back. That was continuously eroded. In few million years in the future, maybe 100, 200 million years, entire Aravalis get eroded. Okay, पूरा खत्म हो सकता है. So there is a upliftment, there is also सब्सिडेंस भी एंडोजेनेटिक ही है, मतलब जैसे एंडोजेनेटिक forces are trying to create landforms, the exogenetic forces are trying to level out, right? There is a balance between both over a long period of time. So what are the different ways in which the exogenetic forces function? How exactly do we see? So all these forces, they are originated from two sources. One is sunlight, another one is gravity. यही दो source है. So we talk about wind. Wind is in motion because of the sun's differential heating. Differential heating causes the difference in pressure, and that causes the movement of wind. The sun's heat causes the water get evaporated and it will fall down, and then through gravity it starts to flow. Rivers, groundwater, oceans, waves, again driven by winds. Waves are driven by winds. Glaciers. Glaciers are one of the strongest force of erosion and breakdown. Okay, when glacier is a huge block of ice, when they move in the mountainous region में ऐसे flow होता है, glaciers का flow होता है, it will break down the mountains also. So why they are created? Why the glaciers are created? Because of again cooling temperature, cooling हुआ है. So winter में बहुत ज़्यादा ठंडा हो गया, तो whatever the water which is there, it has got frozen. The sun's influence, temperature ज़्यादा नहीं है, इसलिए तो glacier form हुआ है ना. The source of energy is either sun's light or gravity. That energy is taken by different agents: wind, water, glacier. There are three major agents which carry this energy: wind, water, water में river water, groundwater, coastal waves, glaciers. They carry this energy. Once they carry this energy, it will start to break down the landforms in some places, and at the same time it will also create new landforms in other places. Creation भी होता है यहाँ पर, but they are all in small scale. Large scale में तो endogenetic में हुआ था, so it happens in small scale. Minor landforms, minor topographical features are created. That is exogenetic movements. Mountain था, gradually erode होके छोटा सा hill हो गया. It will take thousands of years. Gradually hill हो गया, फिर flat हो गया, फिर plain हो गया. Okay, let's say there was a mountain, so the flowing of river deepens it and creates a very deep valley. Valleys are created. Near to the coastal region, continuous waves hitting created a cave. Let's say ऐसा एक जगह में weak rocks आ गया, the water continuously hitting the land over there created caves. In some other places, the deposition of sand creates beach. In riverine region, next to the rivers, you will see the deposition of sand, deposition of sediments, which creates plains. What do we call these plains as? Alluvial plains. Delta to end में रहता है. Delta is also such kind of features are created, right? They are of small scale. So all these features, the landforms, they are the result of endogenetic forces. Sorry, exogenetic forces. Exogenetic forces. The movements are called as exogenetic movements. इसको बोलते हैं exogenetic movements. So if you remember, we have divided all the process. Okay, so सारा process क्या बोलते हैं? Geomorphic processes. Okay, जो भी surface के ऊपर change होता है, all of them, creation, destruction, elevation, subsidence, all of these are geomorphic processes. So one is endogenetic, another one is exogenetic. Exogenetic. Okay, I'll come to this. बताइए कितने लोगों को याद है, देखते हैं without seeing your notes. Endogenetics are divided into catastrophic and diastrophic. Diastrophic are divided into कौन कौन सा? Tectonic, isostatic, eustatic. Tectonics are divided into epirogenic and orogenic. Orogenic is divided into folding, faulting. Folding types बताइए, देखते हैं स्टार्टिंग से. नॉर्मल फॉल्ट, सिमेट्रिक, एसिमेट्रिक, ओवरफोल्ड, रिकम्बेंट, नेपे. फॉल्ट्स में नॉर्मल फॉल्ट, रिवर्स फॉल्ट, ट्रांसफॉर्म फॉल्ट. ठीक है, ये पूरा तभी कवर कर लिया था. So अभी आते हैं exogenetics. Exogenetic movements are classified into कौन सा? Aggradation and degradation. Aggradation and degradation. What is aggradation? So wherever there is elevated land, wherever the force of nature are impacting, at one part it is removed, another part it is deposited, right? So what is happening gradually? Gradually can you see there is a leveling. Okay, there is a leveling of land over a period of time. That part is called as aggradation. Because of the filling up of the material removed from another place, the land gets leveled. Okay, aggradation. Removal is degradation. The removal part is degradation. रिमूवल हो गया तो कहीं पे कहीं डिपॉजिट होना ही चाहिए. इट विल गेट डिपॉजिटेड इन द लो लाइंग एरिया. जहां पर बहुत ज्यादा लो लाइंग एरिया है, इट विल गो एंड डिपॉजिट देयर. दैट डिपॉजिशन इज aggradation. It creates leveling. Removal is called as degradation. Removal happens in three types: weathering, erosion, mass movement. Weathering, erosion and mass movement. So today we will discuss about all the three. What is weathering? What is erosion? What is mass movement? Types of weathering, types of erosion, types of mass movements. ठीक है? So write about this. The overall topic is exogenetic movements. दोनों simultaneous है. These are the Earth's movements caused due to various forces acting from outside the Earth's surface. Outside the Earth's surface. Next paragraph. The source of energy for these movements. The source of energy for these movements are sunlight and gravity. Sunlight and gravity. Next paragraph. The different agents of exogenetic movements. Different agents of exogenetic movements are wind, river, groundwater, waves and glaciers. Waves and glaciers. Next paragraph. exogenetic processes involve aggradation and degradation. Aggradation and degradation. Next paragraph. Aggradation is action of various processes that cause deposition on surface in order to bring uniformity of grade grade, grade, that is slope को ही ग्रेड बोलते हैं. So basically slope is called as grade, right? This is what is slope. So do we have slope here? यहां पर slope है. स्लोप बहुत कम है, यहां पर स्लोप ज्यादा है. So that is what we call it as a grade in geography. Here the grade is high, here the grade is low. So aggradation का मतलब जो ज्यादा ग्रेड है उसको कम करना है. Gradually it is making level. That is what is aggradation. Next, degradation or denudation. Degradation or denudation, both are same. Or denudation involve the combined action of various processes that cause wearing away of Earth's surface. Wearing away of Earth's surface. Wearing away of Earth's surface. And results in general lowering and leveling out. General lowering and leveling out of Earth's surface. Stop. Degradation involves weathering, erosion and mass movement. Weathering, erosion and mass movement. So next subheading, weathering. What is weathering? Breakdown. What kind of breakdown? Let's say there is a hill. In the hills, there are many rocks, boulders. Okay, rocky hills तो देखा होगा. Okay, northern plains में कम है. So if you come to the peninsular India, you will find many of these rocky hills. So will these hills remain the same over a long period of time? Breakdown होता है. They get weathered down. We call it as weathering. ठीक है, छोड़ो. Weathering, erosion, ये सब terminologies छोड़ो. So what is happening here? If you take a long period of time, there are various forces which are impacting this. So for example, there is a sunlight. Daily the heat falls on this. The sun's heat, the sun's light falls on these rocks. And when the rock minerals absorb the heat, it has a tendency to expand. It will not expand too much, but there is some expansion. थोड़ा सा तो expansion होता है. During the night time, there is no sun. It will lose that heat. It will release that heat and it contracts. There is continuous expansion and contraction. Continuously ऐसे चलता है. So what happens when such thing happens? There would be cracks on these rocks. ठीक है. चलो हिल हटा दो. एक सिंपल सा रॉक ले लो. बड़ा सा रॉक ले लो. उससे ईजी है समझना. Let's say there is a very big rock. The sunlight which continuously falls will get it absorb, मतलब इसको heat up करेगा. Night time में तो energy release कर देगा. So continuous expansion and contraction create small cracks. छोटा छोटा सा ऐसे cracks हो जाता है. So that is sunlight. There is moisture in the air. What do we call it as? Water vapor. Water vapor is water in gaseous form which is present in the air. हर जगह में रहता है. It's there everywhere. So whatever the water vapor which is there in the air, when the air becomes very, very cool, it gets deposited as water droplets. What do we call these water droplets as? Dew. इसको dew बोलते हैं. So when dew gets deposited on such rock surface, it will seep into these cracks. Right? Sometimes these water droplets freeze. When temperature drops too much, which happens in desert areas. Temperature drops too much at night, these water droplets will freeze and becomes ice. When it becomes ice, its volume increases. It will exert pressure on these cracks and it will expand the cracks. छोटा छोटा सा cracks था, वो हो गया बड़ा बड़ा सा crack. In the same way, salt also accumulates in these cracks. In desert region, the air contains salt. Salt and minute particles will deposit in these cracks and even they exert pressure on these cracks. ठीक है? There is wind, continuous wind. So let's say this wind carries sand. Wind carries sand. Dust storm तो देखा ही होगा. If it is just a wind, it will not have much power when it moves on these rocks. When wind is just blowing on the rock, there is not much of power in the wind. But the same wind carrying some amount of sand, इसके अंदर mass है, there is some weight, and that causes friction with the rock. Wherever the wind is blowing on the rocks, it causes friction. It rubs against the sand, rubs against the rocks. The sand will rub against the rocks. It will gradually erode, breaks down. Let's say there is a precipitation, very heavy precipitation. Water hits it. Okay, ice storm, hailstorm भी होगा. That will also hit the rocks. Will weaken it down very gradually. There are various different such forces impacting this rock. Over a long period of time, this rock will develop much deeper cracks. जैसे जैसे cracks होगा, gradually break down होते जाएगा. A big boulder gets converted into small rocks will get broken down into much smaller pieces. जितना वो exposed surface मिलता है, more the exposed surface, more the open surface, more impact happens. When big boulder is there, itna hi exposed surface. When you break into smaller, you are exposing the interior parts also. Even there also it will start to break down faster. The breakdown increases. That entire breakdown is denudation. That is degradation or denudation. Aggradation, degradation वाला. इनमें से दो तरीके मैंने बताया था. One, where the agent is moving and it is carrying some other agent and it is trying to move through transportation and erode it. For example, wind मैंने बताया था, it is carrying sand. Sand is in motion. And through the transportation of another material, it is trying to break down this material. There is also rainfall. Rainfall happens and the water flows. As the water flows, it will also carry some sand and it will erode these rocks. Wherever there is involvement of transportation, we call it as erosion. We call it as wind erosion, water erosion. Water while flowing on these rocks, it will start to erode a part of it continuously. When there is a movement, it is erosion. When there is no movement, it is weathering. Sunlight causes heating, expansion, contraction, cracks develop hoga, breakdown hoga, that is weathering. Salt accumulation happens, water accumulation happens, it freezes and expands and contracts, it is weathering. The basic difference between weathering and erosion is involvement of transportation. Where the agents are not in motion, and even the degraded material is also not moving. यहाँ पर जो भी breakdown material हो रहा है ना, it is located at its place only. So what happens when river continuously flows on this? When water continuously flows on this, it will break down a part of it and it will also carry it along with it. That is erosion. Okay, that is erosion. When the breakdown is happening and the material is also removed from its place, it is called as erosion. When the breakdown is happening at its own place without the involvement of movement, without the transportation, it is called as weathering. The difference is slightly technical. वही है, दोनों के इसमें breakdown होगा ही होगा. Both are types of degradation only. Both are types of denudation only. One involves no movement, that is weathering. Another involves movement, that is erosion. For erosion, we need another different agent. एक agent चाहिए. For example, wind is an agent, river is an agent, or glacier is also an agent, which is causing this breakdown during its motion. But sunlight, it will just fall, it will heat up the land, it will expand and then contract, expands and contracts. The rock itself is breaking down. Right? The basic difference is transportation. If the breakdown happens in situ means at its own location, जहां पर वो था वहीं पे है. Even the broken material is also in the same location. After sufficient period of time, if there is broken down material, ऐसा ऐसे छोटा छोटा सा rocks हो गया, and all these rocks are lying in the same place, it is called as weathering. If this material is removed and during that it will break down other material, it is created some particles of rocks. When it is carried by the river or wind, that river or wind gains more energy, it has more erosional power, more power to break down other things. तो रास्ते में जो भी आएगा उसको भी ब्रेक डाउन करते जाएगा, उसको भी तोड़ के जाएगा. दैट इज कॉल्ड एज erosion. The in situ breakdown is weathering. Breakdown in motion is called as erosion. ठीक है, write the definition. Weathering. It is the total effect of various processes. It is the total effect of various processes that cooperate in bringing about decay and disintegration of rocks, bringing about decay and disintegration of rocks involving no large scale transportation. No large scale transportation. So you got the basic difference, weathering and erosion. Weathering is जहां पर था वहीं पे खड़े खड़े खराब होना. ओके, मान लो घर के सामने एक ऐसे ही पुराना वाला बजाज से तक खड़ा कर दिया, छोड़ दिया, ओके, ओवर ए लॉन्ग पीरियड ऑफ टाइम ऐसे रस्ट हो जाएगा, फिर खराब हो जाएगा ओवर ए पीरियड ऑफ टाइम. वी आर नॉट इवन मूविंग इट, वहीं पे खड़े खड़े खराब हो गया ना. दैट इज वेदरिंग. वी कैन से इट हैज वेदर डाउन. वेदर हो गया है, वेदरिंग हो गया. सो फिर चलाते चलाते खराब हो गया, कंटिन्यूसली चला चला के खराब हो गया. इट इज एरोजन. वेयर देयर इज ए मूवमेंट, वेयर देयर इज ए ट्रांसपोर्टेशन. ठीक है. नाउ लेट्स टॉक अबाउट वेदरिंग. So the rate of weathering is slightly slow when we compare it to erosion. है ना. तो चेतक को चलाते चलाते जल्दी खराब हो जाएगा ना, तो वहीं पे खड़ा कर दो, टाइम लगेगा. So it is slow. But the rate of weathering is different from one place to another. एक जगह से दूसरी जगह, like if you compare two different places, the rate of weathering is always different. In one place, the rocks undergo weathering fast. Other places, it is very, very slow. What are the factors which will decide the rate of weathering? Why there are so many different, so much of differences from one place to another? Temperature, then material of rock, मतलब किस टाइप का रॉक है. ठीक है, सेडिमेंट्री, इग्नियस, वेरी गुड. देन और क्लाइमेट, टेम्परेचर आ जाएगा. क्लाइमेट, टेम्परेचर, वाटर. वाटर इज ऑल्सो अनदर इंपॉर्टेंट फैक्टर. ओके, ह्यूमिडिटी, नॉट एज एजेंट ऑफ ट्रांसपोर्टेशन, उसका केमिकल इंपैक्ट होता है. केमिकल एज वेल एज फिजिकल इंपैक्ट. जो फ्रीजिंग इफेक्ट था दैट इज ड्यू टू वाटर, राइट. ठीक है, और कुछ. विंड विल नॉट बी कंसिडर्ड इन वेदरिंग बिकॉज देयर इज ए मूवमेंट, सो इट बिकम्स एरोजन. और एक्शन ऑफ वाटर. वाटर का तो है ही. ठीक है, लैटिट्यूड तो वही टेम्परेचर के ऊपर आ गया. और आल्टीट्यूड. आल्टीट्यूड्स कैसे? डिफरेंस इन सनलाइट. व्हाट कॉजेस डिफरेंस इन सनलाइट? द रेंज ऑफ टेम्परेचर. ठीक है, हो गया, टेम्परेचर हो गया. और टेम्परेचर, वही टाइप, रॉक टाइप. स्लोप इज अनदर फैक्टर. जहां पर ज्यादा स्लोप है ज्यादा वेदरिंग होता है. ठीक है, चलो विल टॉक वन बाय वन. द फर्स्ट वन, रॉक टाइप एंड स्ट्रक्चर. Rock type and structure is a primary factor which will decide the rate of weathering. That's because some of the rocks weather faster, some of the rocks weather slower. मतलब अंदर दम नहीं है तो बहुत जल्दी weather हो जाएगा. So which rocks are weaker? Sedimentary rocks. Already sediment हो गया था, फिर दोबारा rocks बना था, है ना. So that is what is sedimentary rocks, right? So they get weathered very fast. So which is made up of multiple different layers, जिसके अंदर ऐसे bedding planes रहते हैं, plane रहते हैं. They're made up of multiple layers. It undergoes weathering faster. So rock type में आपको clearly पता चलेगा the type, the nature of the rock, whether it is igneous rock, sedimentary rock or metamorphic rock. Maybe metamorphic rocks will take more longer time. Heat के pressure के वजह से वो ज़्यादा hard हो गया, possible है. Structure, even within a particular type of rock also interior structure कैसा था वो भी decide करता है. Some of the rocks are porous in nature. What do you mean by porous? Porous का मतलब क्या है? Yeah, allows water to pass अलग है. So porous means the presence of pore spaces. ऐसे gaps रहता है ना. The presence of these gaps within the rocks, it is called as porous rocks. Okay, gaps होगा तो air gap होगा तो जिसकी वजह से ज्यादा weak हो जाएगा. So what is permeability? This what is porosity. Amount of pore spaces is porosity. Permeability, it allows water. Okay, so this the type of rock which will let the water to pass through. Can porosity guarantee permeability? Not always. Okay, not always. So what is permeability? The way these gaps are connected, interconnection among these gaps which will let the water to pass through it. Some of the rocks are porous as well as permeable, but some other rocks are only porous but not permeable. It will take longer time for weathering. Right? So, for example, black soil. Black soil is highly porous, but it is not permeable. It will not let the water to pass through. It will hold the water. जहाँ पर black soil रहता है, it will hold the water. So, black soil is highly porous. It is made up of pore spaces. ठीक है? So, the way the rocks are there, its presence of bedding planes, fracture planes, जहाँ पर crack ज़्यादा है, बहुत जल्दी breakdown होगा. That is all rock type and structure. ठीक है? Slope and aspect. So wherever there is higher slope, here also the exposed surface is undergoing weathering. But what is happening? The weathered portion is removed very easily. अगर पूरा flat है तो weathered portion बस वही ऊपर ही रहता है. It will protect the lower layers from further weathering. The weathered part will protect the lower layers from further weathering. But here the weathered part will be easily removed, flow down हो जाएगा. It will expose the other parts. वो भी weather होगा. जहां पर slope ज्यादा रहता है, higher rate of weathering. ठीक है? Higher the slope, higher rates of weathering because the weathered material is removed faster. What do you mean by aspect? Aspect refers to direction, location. किस direction में है, किस location में है. For example, let's say this is Himalayan mountains. मान लो ये Himalayan mountains है. And this is south facing, this is north facing. In Himalayas, the south facing receives more sunlight than north facing. क्योंकि sun का पोजीशन तो maximum मध्य प्रदेश तक ही आएगा, Tropic of Cancer. It will not go beyond that. The south face is more exposed to the sunlight than the north face. So more amount of action is done along the south face. The sunlight action is more along the south face. Same goes with the monsoon winds. Winds छोड़ो, बारिश होगा. More amount of water vapor is available here on the south face because that is the one which is facing the rainfall. More water vapor, more weathering, right, than the north face. That is what is aspect. किस direction में है, किस location में है, that is what is aspect. That will also decide. Then there is temperature. What is the role of temperature in weathering? वही heating, cooling. So it's not about the high temperature or low temperature. Okay, whether it is a very high temperature or very low temperature. It is about the range of temperature. How much of range is experienced? Range means the difference between the highest and lowest. If there is a constant high temperature or constant low temperature, वहां पर ज्यादा weathering नहीं होगा. Rather, if there is some high temperature and some low temperature and there is continuously changing, there is higher rate of weathering because at high temperature the rocks expand. At low temperature it contracts. Expands, contracts, expands, contracts. It will break down. It will break down very easily. It weakens up over a period of time. That is what is range of temperature. Other than that, temperature also enables chemical reactions. The rocks break down through chemical reactions also. various different chemicals, the gases present in the atmosphere, it will react with the minerals in the rocks. They react more in the presence of high temperature. जहां पर high temperature reactions ज़्यादा रहते हैं. So we call it as chemical weathering. Breakdown of rocks through chemical reaction, it is called as chemical weathering. So it helps in chemical weathering. ठीक है, temperature हो गया. Then water. Water is another factor. वही freezing, cooling. I'm not talking about the movement. Flowing water से erosion हो गया. So water से weathering कैसे होगा? Due to the freezing and cooling effect. When water accumulates in the pore spaces and it freezes, it expands. When it expands, its volume increases. Right? When it freezes, ice बन गया तो normal water से तो ज़्यादा volume है ना? So it expands and volume increases. That causes more pressure on the pore spaces. It will expand the pore spaces. ठीक है? Freezing, cooling हो गया. And water also helps in chemical reaction. In the presence of water, more chemical reactions happen. It helps in chemical weathering. ठीक है? Fifth one, biological agents. Various different biological agents which are present near to the surface helps in weathering. So मान लो there is totally hard rock surface. If there is totally hard rock surface and on that hard rock surface we start to experience lichens. What is lichens? जो green color रहता है, तो जहां पर moisture content रहता है, it starts to accumulate. देखा है ना? क्या बोलते हैं हिंदी में? That is what is lichens. So when they grow in large scale, okay, basically it is capable of growing. It is capable of photosynthesis and it is capable of growing continuously. And they die and they causes decomposition. The organic matter causes decomposition. During the decomposition, there are certain chemicals released. It will gradually break down the rocks also. इसलिए दीवार के ऊपर लगता है gradually वो weaken हो जाएगा. Right? So that is how it can break down the rocks also and convert into soil. What is soil? The sediments derived from the rock is called as soil. So if there is a thin layer of soil, let's say there is some grass growing continuously. Grass adds vegetation matter. It adds nutrients. The grass roots will try to penetrate into the deeper parts. And these roots, they are also capable of exerting pressure. It creates cracks. Plant roots, tree roots. बहुत जगह में these roots, they make the top layer weaken. That is also weathering. The plant roots, they exert a very high amount of pressure. Continuously है, बहुत कम है, continuously चलता है ना? So you can see in many of the times even along the roof, concrete के surface के ऊपर से आ जाता है. So कैसे आएगा? कहीं पे gap में कोई seed फंस गया होगा bird dropping से, so it just requires amount of moisture. It will develop roots and the roots are capable of penetrating even into the concrete. The plant roots have that capacity. Okay, so biological agents. So we have various different burrowing animals. जो worms होगा, earthworms हो गया, rodents, rats, and various other organisms which live in the top layer. They continuously burrow and makes the loosening up of the top layer. उसको loosen करके रखता है ना. It gets eroded. It gets weathered very easily. It gets degraded very easily. So biological agents also have a very important role. So we call it as a separate type of weathering only. Biological weathering बोलते हैं. The weathering by the biological agents. 5 important factors which will decide the rate of weathering. Rock type and structure. Second one, slope aspect. Third, temperature. Fourth, water. Fifth, biological agents. So this is what creates differences in weathering from one place to another. इसलिए तो अलग अलग जगह में अलग अलग रेट में चलता है weathering. Right about this. First one, rock type and structure. It includes characteristics like origin, massiveness, porosity, permeability, porosity, permeability, presence of fractures, etc. etc. Example, sedimentary rocks, sedimentary rocks are weathered faster than igneous rocks. Second, slope and aspect. Slope and aspect. First point, steep slope will greatly aid weathering. Steep slope will greatly aid weathering as disintegrated material gets removed faster. Next point, the slopes which are exposed to wind, rainfall and sunlight are more prone to weathering. Example, south facing slopes of Himalayas. Third, temperature. The range of temperature particularly diurnal range diurnal मतलब daily range. Daily जो होता है, it's called as diurnal, मतलब दिन में एक बार, मतलब basically it is referring to the daytime and nighttime range of temperature is diurnal range of temperature. ये सब तो जियोग्राफी का टर्म है, थोड़ा यूज करना है तभी लगेगा जियोग्राफी का आंसर. ठीक है. Diurnal range subjects the surface layer to expansion and contraction expansion and contraction continuously, causing a physical breakdown next point, within that temperature के अंदर temperature also increases the range of certain chemical reactions. Temperature also increases the range of certain chemical reactions. Fourth, water. When water is added or removed, it imposes mechanical stress. It imposes mechanical stress on the rocks and causes it to split. Next point. Water also decides the rate of chemical reactions. Fifth, biological agents. It includes the action of plant roots, microorganisms, and burrowing animals. Burrowing animals which create burrows. Okay, for example, earthworms, rats. आ जाएगा, बायोलॉजिकल एजेंट्स में आ जाएंगे. BURROW, burrowing animals. Types of weathering. So basically, there are three categories of weathering. We can classify the weathering into three types. First one is physical weathering. Second one is chemical weathering. Third, biological weathering. You can clearly understand by the meaning of the term itself. Physical breakdown is physical weathering. Chemical breakdown is chemical weathering. Biological breakdown is biological weathering. Physical breakdown में क्या होता है? The rock just changes its physical nature. There is a very big rock, it got broken down into smaller rocks. Physical nature ही change हुआ है. Chemical properties remain the same. उसका जो अंदर का chemical composition था वो same ही है in both the bigger rocks and smaller rocks. That is physical breakdown. Okay, the physical status, the physical condition itself is changed. Physical weathering. Chemical weathering, where there is a change in the chemical composition also. Some of the rock minerals, they react with water, they react with carbon in the atmosphere, they react with oxygen in the atmosphere. The minerals, they change, they get oxidized, reduced, है ना, or dissolved. So chemical reaction की वजह से chemical composition change होता है, that is chemical weathering. Biological weathering, जो biological agent के वजह से हुआ था, that is biological weathering. So in this, the major division is physical and chemical weathering. What are the differences between physical and chemical weathering? So physical weathering is also called as mechanical weathering. So I told you, so there is a same rock, if it is undergoing change in the physical form, it is called as physical weathering. If it is undergoing change in the chemical composition, it is called as chemical weathering. So physical weathering is disintegration of the rocks without any change in the chemical constituents. The decomposition of the rocks with changes in the chemical constituents, that is chemical weathering. The important factors which are deciding the physical weathering is temperature. Temperature कैसे? High temperature, low temperature, heating, cooling. Moisture content, water तो मैंने already explain कर दिया. The freezing action, it exerts the physical pressure, right? It is capable of breaking the rocks physically itself. Chemically छोड़ो, chemically भी moisture का role है. Frost action वही है, जो freezing action. And wind is basically air. Okay, so that is physically breaking down. Physically it is impacting. Here the chemically it is because of temperature. At high temperature the chemical reactions are faster. At higher moisture level again the chemical reactions are faster. The two factors, temperature and moisture. Physical weathering is more active in desert climate. Why? Physical weathering. Physical weathering is more active in desert climate. Water कम रहता है. For chemical reaction, most of the chemical reaction you need water. Extreme temperature, हाँ extreme temperature भी है. Extreme temperature की वजह से physical breakdown होगा, right? And water कम रहता है. So where there is less water, chemical reactions are less. Here it occurs in moist conditions. Okay, moist condition जहां पर आएगा, there is more chemical reactions. When the rocks undergo physical weathering, it gets impacted to a greater depths. मतलब if there was a big rock, it got broken down into smaller ones. That is physical weathering. Chemical weathering में क्या होगा? If this is the rock, बस बाहर का layer reaction होके that gets converted. अंदर वाला तो exposed नहीं था ना. The inner layers are not exposed to the open air. जो भी chemical reaction होगा बाहर से होगा ना. So the depth at which the weathering is happening is only limited to the surface. They don't get impacted to a very deeper levels. Because chemical reactions, it happens from air. Either due to the reaction with oxygen or due to the reaction with water. है ना, chemically react करता है. So it will not happen into the deeper part. जो exposed नहीं है वहां पर तो नहीं होगा. So that's why it takes place near to the surface, not in the deeper depths. So agents already explained कर दिया, it is the same. That is the major difference between physical weathering and chemical weathering. So basic difference is physical weathering is change in the physical form, chemical weathering is change in the chemical form. Chemically उसका composition change हो जाएगा. So but in the nature both happens parallelly. ऐसे बोलना मुश्किल है कि खाली physical weathering ही होगा या खाली chemical weathering ही होगा, दोनों parallel ही चलता है. In some of the places you will see the dominance of physical weathering, other places the dominance of chemical weathering. थोड़ा सा जगह छोड़ दो, I'll leave it during the break, you can write that. Chemical weathering. So there are different types of weathering. There are different types of physical weathering, different types of chemical weathering, and different types of biological weathering. ठीक है? So let's talk about it one by one. First one, physical weathering. Difference के लिए थोड़ा जगह छोड़ दो. ठीक है? नहीं लिखा तो भी चलेगा मेरे लिए क्या. वो एरोजन है, वेदरिंग नहीं है. So physical weathering, they are classified into two categories. The first category is called as crystal growth. First category is called as crystal growth. The second category is called as pressure or thermal expansion. Okay, this is not the type of weathering, ये category का नाम है, grouping बता रहा हूं मैं. Okay, I'll tell you about that. First, let's see crystal growth. So wherever there is a physical weathering कहां पर ज्यादा active रहता है? Along desert regions. It is in desert regions the physical weathering is more active. So in desert regions, two important physical stress creating factors are there. One is water, another one is salt. How come? Desert में तो पानी का तो बहुत कमी रहता है, सरफेस में तो कमी रहता है, बट एयर में देयर वुड बी सम अमाउंट ऑफ मॉइस्चर. ऐसा नहीं है कि जीरो मॉइस्चर है, जीरो मॉइस्चर तो कभी भी नहीं होगा. द एयर कैरी सम अमाउंट ऑफ मॉइस्चर. रुक जाइए थोड़ा सा. So the air carries moisture. Okay, there is some amount of moisture content in the air. So during the daytime, it is in the form of gas because overall high temperature hai. During the night time, the temperature drops and this moisture content in the air gets converted into water and gets deposited on the surface. Even though there is lack of moisture content, you will find some dew. Dew to milega desert mein. Early morning time, you will find dew on grasses or the rocks or everywhere. So this is what is the moisture content I am talking about. During the night time, when the temperature drops, the water droplets accumulate on the surface. And these dew drops accumulates in the cracks and pore spaces on the rocks. They continuously get accumulated. When they freeze, it expands the cracks. The next day, it will melt, the water gets evaporated, but it has left a bigger crack. The next night, more water accumulates, more freezing happens, more expansion happens, and that also gets evaporated. It will leave much bigger cracks. So overnight to nahi hoga, it will take thousands of years. Gradually, the cracks deepen and the rocks break. That is the role of water. ये तो बड़ा सा ऐसे पत्थर जैसे दिखाया था. It can happen even along the surface. What happens? The water which gets collected on the surface forms a thin sheet of ice. It forms a thin sheet of ice. What do we call it as? Frost. उसको बोलते हैं frost. Okay, it happens even in northern plains also. During the peak winters time, the soil gets covered with thin sheet of ice because of the freezing effect. So that sheet of ice, basically water tha, ice जैसे convert हो गया, as it gets converted into water, as it gets converted into ice, it expands. The entire layer of water expands. It exerts pressure on the top layer and it develops cracks. It breaks and develops the cracks. So what is happening? There is a growth of crystal. That is what is crystal growth. It can happen due to the growth of water crystals, which we call it as ice, or it can result in the growth of salt crystal too. Salt crystal कैसे होगा? Wherever there is some water, whatever the water which is there, it gets evaporated very easily. Whatever the water is there in the desert region, desert ऐसा नहीं कि पानी बिल्कुल नहीं होता है, थोड़ा सा कम रहता है, but थोड़ा सा तो रहता है. Okay, a desert is a region which receives less than 25 centimeters of precipitation. 25 centimeters तो होगा, जो थोड़ा सा भी पानी आएगा, it will get evaporated. But when it gets evaporated, it will leave the salt behind. So usually desert is rich in salt content. Upper part में ना पूरा के पूरा ऐसे salt रहता है. And some of these salt particles are also lifted by air. So air also contains some salt particles. If there is any rock here, and if there is pore spaces in the rocks, these salt will get deposited in these pore spaces very easily. Due to the continuous accumulation of salt particles, even that exerts pressure. उस cracks में ना continuously accumulate होके उसका थोड़ा सा weight रहता है ना, even though it is small, the continuous accumulation of salt particles exert pressure and deepens the cracks. And if at all water fills in the same gas, the salt will absorb water and expands. Even salt is also capable of exerting physical pressure. So there is a result of crystal growth. Here also salt is also crystal. It can result in salt accumulation, and due to the continuous accumulation of salt, it may break down the rocks, which we call it as haloclasty. इसको बोलते हैं haloclasty. This is the actual type of weathering. आपको ऊपर वाला हेडिंग याद रहेगा या नहीं रहेगा? फिजिकल वेदरिंग फर्स्ट, haloclasty याद होना चाहिए. Haloclasty is accumulation of salt particles in the rocks and that exerting pressure on the rocks and making it to break down. It is called as haloclasty. Haloclasty is salt weathering. Salt weathering. Accumulation of water which causes the formation of ice crystals, that is of two types. One is frost shattering. Second one is freeze thaw. Both are same process. What is the process here? The water getting accumulated in the pore spaces and expanding, freezing and causing exerting pressure on the rocks and the surfaces. That is what is water crystal growth. If the same thing is happening in desert region, it is called as frost shattering. Through the accumulation, through the formation of frost, it will shatter the rocks. It will break down the rocks. कैसे होगा? Like this. This is the result of frost shattering. The continuous accumulation of frost बन के ना, it continuously exerts pressure and breaks the rocks, breaks the surface. This is frost shattering. Okay, over a long period of time it happens. Surface के ऊपर बनेगा, rocks के ऊपर भी बनेगा, frost surface के ऊपर भी बनेगा, कहीं पे भी बनेगा. The thin layer of ice is called as frost, and that ice, as it expands, it exerts pressure and it breaks down the rocks over a long period of time. It is called as frost shattering. Same action happens in glacial region. It is called as freeze thaw. Thaw is melt, freeze is opposite of melt. So basically what happens in glacial regions, the ice accumulates, the water accumulates on the rocks and surfaces. It freezes very easily, but when sunlight falls on it, it melts. Next night again freezes, again melts, again freezes, again melts. In that way it can break down the rocks near to the glacial regions also. Near to the glacial region, it is called as freeze thaw. Near to the arid region, it is called as frost shattering. It is the result of water crystal accumulation, which we call it as crystal growth. Crystal growth can be of two types: growth of water crystal or growth of salt crystal. Growth of water crystal in desert region causes frost shattering. Growth of water crystals in glacial region causes freeze thaw. Growth of salt crystal in anywhere, वो तो desert में ही होगा, it is called as haloclasty. Okay, in simple way आपको याद रखने हैं different types of physical weathering. Number 1 frost shattering, number 2 freeze thaw, number 3 haloclasty. So पूरा process याद रखना है तो you can remember this flow chart. ठीक है, write about this, then we'll come to the other one, pressure and thermal expansion. Doubt है? Okay, number 1 physical weathering. Types of weathering के अंदर number 1 physical weathering. In that, first one, crystal growth. फिर उसके अंदर पहले वाला growth of water crystal. Growth of water crystal. When water freezes, it expands. It expands and finds its way in cracks or pores. It expands and finds its way in cracks or pores. Comma, it wedges apart. Wedges apart. It wedges apart rock fissures and joints. Rock fissures and joints. Rock fissures. Rock fissures and joints. In desert regions, it results in frost shattering. It results in frost shattering. In glacial regions, it causes freeze thaw. Freeze thaw. So next, salt crystals. Salt crystal. Growth of salt crystals by crystallization. Growth of salt crystals by crystallization. As moisture evaporates, creating pressure in pore spaces and cracks. In pore spaces and cracks. Full stop. It is also called as haloclasty. Haloclasty. In the bracket, salt weathering. salt weathering. In case of pressure or thermal expansion, we have 4 categories. One is exfoliation. Second, pressure release. Third, block disintegration. Fourth, granular disintegration. See, physical breakdown can happen majorly due to the growth of crystals or due to the changes in temperature and pressure. The temperature and pressure changes can also exert the physical pressure and cause the breakdown of rocks. So all of these are due to the changes in temperature and pressure. Okay, first exfoliation. Exfoliation का बात करते हैं. Let's say there is a big boulder. Okay, बड़ा सा rock, a big rock is called as boulder. The continuous heating and cooling of this rock, daytime में heat होगा, night time में cool होगा, दोबारा daytime में heat होगा, night time में cool होगा, ऐसा continuously चलेगा. If the rock has a solid outer layer, which it happens in many of the cases, बहुत बार ऐसे होता है कि रॉक का एक आउटर हार्ड लेयर रहता है, over a period of time it has got hardened up, and अंदर का जो पार्ट है थोड़ा सा सॉफ्ट रहता है. If such kind of rocks are exposed to continuous heating and cooling, the outer layer cracks very easily, क्योंकि major heating and cooling तो outer layer में ही हुआ है. It will crack and it will come out like a shell. Like a shell breaking, it will come out and it will expose the soft layers of inside. That is called as exfoliation. Exfoliation is what? It is removal of outer cover of the rocks due to the continuous heating and cooling of the entire surface. Exfoliation is very common. Many of you would have seen this. Can you see? This is what is exfoliation. The outer layer of rocks breaks due to the continuous heating and cooling. देखा है? जो रॉकी हिल्स है उसका अपर पार्ट में ऐसा ही रहता है. It is very easy to identify this exfoliation. It is the breaking up of outer layer due to the continuous heating and cooling. Like this. प्रेशर रिलीज क्या होता है? It is also physical weathering only, but here it is due to the change of pressure. Let's say there is a very big surface which is made up of multiple layers of rocks. It is made up of multiple layers of rocks. जो सबसे नीचे वाला पोर्शन है, it is bearing the weight of the upper layers. The upper layers are continuously exerting pressure on the lower layers, because of which the lower layer has got totally contracted. पूरा दबा हुआ है, पूरा contract हो गया. The weathering or any other type of degradation, let's say it removes the upper layer. Once the upper layer is removed, this layer is exposed. Let's say this layer is also removed. Now the overall weight compared to the earlier situation is less, आधा कम हो गया, because of which the lower layer starts to crack by itself. वो अपने आप crack होके टूट जाएगा. Why? Earlier pressure was there too much. Now the pressure is released. The release of pressure, the confining pressure by the overlying rocks, जो ऊपर वाला rocks था ना, जैसे 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 वो weather हो गया, जो नीचे उसके ऊपर जो pressure था वो release हो गया. That causes the breakdown of this lower rocks. ये अपने आप ऐसे breakdown हो जाएगा. Such kind of weathering is called as pressure release. Pressure release. फिर ब्लॉक डिसइंटीग्रेशन, ग्रैनुलर डिसइंटीग्रेशन तो बहुत सिंपल है. वॉट एवर द टाइप ऑफ वेदरिंग, इफ द फाइनल प्रोडक्ट इज इन टर्म्स ऑफ ब्लॉक्स, ब्रेक डाउन होके फाइनली ब्लॉक्स रह गया, बिकॉज द एंटायर रॉक इज मेड अप ऑफ क्रैक्स, बेडिंग प्लेन्स ऐसे था, फाइनली इट हैज रिजल्टेड इन द फॉर्मेशन ऑफ ब्लॉक्स, इट इज कॉल्ड एज ब्लॉक डिसइंटीग्रेशन. और फाइनली इट हैज रिजल्टेड इन स्मॉल ग्रैन्यूल्स, छोटा छोटा सा ग्रैन्यूल्स है, it is called as granular disintegration. These are the different types of physical weathering. Actual types कौन कौन सा है बताइए? Frost shattering, freeze thaw, haloclasty, exfoliation, pressure release, block and granular disintegration. Either you can write it in a linear order. These are the different examples of physical weathering, or you can put a classification also. But nobody is going to ask you what is exfoliation, what is haloclasty. In mains, the overall question will be what is weathering, factors affecting weathering, explain the different types of weathering. Okay? So even if you remember 2, 3 and if you are able to give examples of 2, 3, that is sufficient. That will be fine. But in prelims, you may get questions. Okay, they may give you a paragraph and ask you which of the following is this process. It is exfoliation or frost shattering or pressure release or haloclasty, like that. Okay, prelims में question आ सकते, mains में तो it is going to be simple. It is not going to be very detailed questions. So write about this. Pressure release, exfoliation, पहले exfoliation लिखो. हेडिंग था प्रेशर और थर्मल एक्सपेंशन. प्रेशर और थर्मल एक्सपेंशन. फर्स्ट वन प्रेशर रिलीज, एक्सफोलिएशन, एक्सफोलिएशन, रैपिड एक्सपेंशन एंड कॉन्ट्रैक्शन ऑफ सरफेस रॉक्स. Rapid expansion and contraction of surface rocks. Weakens the outer shell. Weakens the outer shell, creating cracks, causing the rock shell peel off, to peel off, P-E-E-L, peel off, O-F-F. Peel off. Next, pressure release. लिखो लिखो. Confining pressure. Confining pressure from the weight of overlying rocks. Confining pressure from the weight of overlying rocks is released from the weight of overlying rocks is released when the upper layer of rocks, when the upper layer of rocks are removed by degradation, removed by degradation. Stop. This causes rocks to expand. This causes rocks to expand, leading to development of fractures. Fractures. Third, block disintegration. Block disintegration, where weathering causes breakdown of rocks in blocks. Breakdown of rocks in blocks. Fourth, granular disintegration, where breakdown occurs in granules. Okay, these are the different types of physical weathering. Disintegration. Yes, similar shape होने का जरूरी नहीं है block disintegration में. Overall, the breakdown, the broken rock material is in the form of blocks. Finally बचा है blocks, that is block disintegration. वो process कैसे भी हो जाए, either due to exfoliation or due to pressure release, जो भी होगा. नहीं, ब्लॉक इज टोटल ब्लॉक टाइप होता है. ग्रैन्यू, हाँ ऐसे. प्रेशर का, एयर प्रेशर का नहीं, वो कन्फाइनिंग. नहीं, ओशंस में जो रॉक्स होगा वो ब्रेकडाउन होगा केमिकल प्रोसेस से. ओके, सो वेदरिंग तो सरफेस के ऊपर ही ज्यादा रहता है, उस पानी के अंदर तो वेदरिंग नहीं होता. इट्स मोर ऑफ एरोजन. सो लेट्स टॉक अबाउट chemical weathering. ये खत्म कर दो, वेदरिंग खत्म कर दो. So chemical weathering तो सिंपल है. So weathering through various different reactions. Chemical reactions तो पढ़ा होगा स्कूल में. There are few important chemical reactions which happen from atmosphere. Atmosphere से होता है, and that will break down the rocks from the surface. Number one, hydrolysis. What is hydrolysis? Hydrolysis क्या है? Union of water and a mineral is called as hydrolysis. Okay, take a glass of water, mix sugar or salt. That is what is hydrolysis. The minerals completely getting dissolved in the water. Hydrolysis. Right? So that creates solution. Solution हो जाता है. The minerals gets dissolved in the water. Is hydrolysis. There is also hydration. सुना है hydration? बताइए what is hydration? Guess मत करो, जो पता है बताओ. Addition of water. Addition of water is basically addition of water molecule into the rock minerals. Hydrolysis में क्या हुआ था? There was more amount of water. The mineral is getting dissolved in the water. In hydration, there is less amount of water. There is some amount of moisture that is getting absorbed into the rock. Rock तो वैसे ही है. The water gets absorbed into the rock structure, and there it is getting reacting with the minerals inside. For example, during the rainy season, you will see the swelling of this wooden items. वो क्यों है? It has absorbed the moisture. अगर वो moisture absorb करके chemical react हो गया, that is called as hydration. फिर तीसरा है oxidation reduction. Oxidation क्या है? Oxidation. Addition of oxygen is oxidation. Removal of oxygen is reduction. Because there is too much of oxygen in the atmosphere, it reacts with various different minerals. It forms oxides. Oxidation reduction. Then carbonation. The water gets mixed up with the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. It results in the formation of carbonic acid. Carbonic acid reacts with various different minerals, and that causes carbonation. For example, limestone. Limestone reacts very easily in rainwater. Rainwater से melt हो जाता है limestone, है ना? That is carbonation. Write about this. Hydrolysis, chemical weathering. First one, hydrolysis. It is the chemical union of water. Chemical union of water and mineral. It produces solution. It produces solution. Second, hydration. It is when minerals incorporate. It is when minerals incorporate water into their molecular structure. Minerals incorporate water into their molecular structure. So it causes swelling. Third, oxidation reduction. Oxidation reduction. It involves addition or removal of oxygen. It involves addition or removal of oxygen. It causes discoloration. It causes discoloration. होगा discoloration होगा. That is what is rusting. Iron से जब oxide react होते हैं, it results in rusting, right? Discoloration. They are the first visible signs of chemical weathering. They are the first visible signs of chemical weathering. Chemical weathering हुआ है कैसे पता चलेगा? Through discoloration. नहीं वो लगे. Fourth, carbonation. Rainwater absorbs carbon dioxide. Rainwater absorbs carbon dioxide and gets converted into carbonic acid. Gets converted into carbonic acid. Limestone and dolomite. Limestone and dolomites are altered by dissolving action of carbonic acid. Third, biological weathering. ये तो ऑलरेडी लिख लिया है, जो बायोलॉजिकल एजेंट्स में लिखा था ना वही है. सो एक लाइन ऐड करो इधर. इट्स अ टाइप ऑफ वेदरिंग. It is a type of weathering due to the action of biological agents. So let's take a break. Continue after the break. So we discussed about weathering. So next one is erosion. So erosion already मैंने explain कर दिया है. Degradation at its own location is called as weathering. Degradation with transportation is called as erosion. So difference क्या है weathering erosion में? Transportation. What is causing the transportation? Agents. Different agents. Wind, water, glaciers. Water we have running water, groundwater. Groundwater is also moving water. Running water, groundwater and waves. So gravity इसलिए include नहीं किया जाता है कि gravity is just a source of energy. That energy is carried by these agents only. We need some agent which is capable of causing erosion. These are the 5 agents which causes erosion. Wind, river water, groundwater, waves and then glaciers. 5 agents, these carry the energy given by the sunlight and gravity. But one difference, along with this, it also has the weathered material along with it. It has the weathered material along with it. So यहां पर तो let's say there was rock, let's say there was a big rock. Over a period of time it underwent the breakdown, weathering, chemical weathering, physical weathering, सब हो गया. After a long period of time it has got converted into small granules, small fragments, which we call it as sediments. These sediments are still located in the same place where the original rock was there. That is what is weathering. So now once these sediments are put to motion, they are carried by the different agents, for example wind or water or a moving glaciers. It will give energy to those agents. A normal wind and a wind mixed with sand, which one is more powerful? Mixed with sand, उसमें ज़्यादा weight है. It has a higher capacity to break down things in its path. A river, it is just a normal water, or a river water which is mixed with sediments. Which one has a higher capacity to break down? Sediments. उसके अंदर ज़्यादा force रहता है. That force, when it impacts the other surface, let's say this wind carrying the sand and it is rubbing against other surface, this other surface will break down gradually because it is continuously getting impacted by the wind which carries sand. Wind se break down nahi hoga, but the sand which is carried by the wind, that will break down the surface, right? River water, if it is just flowing, it may not break down the river bed. But if the same river water which is completely mixed with mud and sediments, if it is flowing on the surface, it will break down the river bed. उसको continuously erode करता है, इसको continuously break down करता है. That is what is erosion, right? So erosion is breakdown along with the movement of these broken sediments. For erosion, we need weathering as well as transportation. Weathering भी चाहिए, then only it produces these sediments. Weathering produces the sediments, and these sediments, when they are put to motion, it results in erosion. Write the definition. Erosion refers to wearing away of land surface. Wearing away of land surface by mechanical action by mechanical action of debris derived from weathering. Derived from weathering, as they are transported to different locations by agents like wind, water, glacier, etc. Wind, water, glacier, etc. There are many different types of erosion. Erosion बड़ा important है क्योंकि next topic जो landforms वाला topic है वहां पर हमें यही काम आएगा. Because most of the major landforms are created by the action of erosion. Weathering is very slow process and it will take a long period of time. We define different types of landforms through erosional activities. Erosion defines a particular type of landform. For example, wherever there is a river flow, so along the entire region where the river is flowing, it results in the creation of riverine landforms. That is due to the erosion of river, erosion and deposition of river sediments. like that. So we'll study about that. So we need to remember the important erosional types. चलो इसको छोड़ो. So next, types of erosion. First one, abrasion. Abrasion. So सुना है abrasion? Any of you have heard about abrasion? So what have you heard about abrasion? What is the meaning of abrasion? So what happens in abrasion? Abrasion means rubbing. Rubbing action. Rubbing, scratching, polishing. When wind carries sediments or river carries sediments, and these sediments are carried, they are moved across the different surfaces. When they are moving across the different surfaces, it will scratch along the surfaces, it will rub against the other surfaces, and through that process it will polish this entire surface, and gradually it will erode this surface. When wind carries the sand, and this sand blown by the wind, it will hit other surfaces and it will cause an impact and it will break down the other surface through rubbing, polishing, scratching. That is called as abrasion. It can be done by the wind as well as by the water. The river water also does the same effect. Abrasion in water is called as corrosion. Corrosion nahi, corrosion. Corrosion is different, corrosion is different. Abrasion in water, that is water causing abrasion, is called as corrosion. जब abrasion होगा, it creates very smooth surface. अगल बगल में जो abrasion की वजह से create होता है ना, it is a very smooth surface like this. ठीक है? It is more active in desert region. Wind abrasion is active in desert region. Water abrasion is active in rivers, riverine topography. है ना? So such kind of action where the wind is carrying the sand and is breaking down the surface through rubbing, polishing, scratching, it's called as abrasion. देखो कितना फाइन पॉलिशिंग किया है, हमारा मशीन से भी ज्यादा फाइन है. First one, abrasion, right? Wearing away of surfaces. Wearing away of surfaces by mechanical processes. By mechanical processes such as rubbing, scratching, polishing, etc. Rubbing, scratching, polishing, etc. Full stop. Abrasion in water is called as abrasion in water is called as corrosion. Abrasion in water is called as corrosion. Second one, attrition. Attrition. Have you heard of the term attrition? कोई सुना है? Nobody? So you might have heard about attrition rate. जो कॉर्पोरेट में काम किया है उनको पता है. Attrition rate. So corporate में ये term जहां पर यूज होता है, attrition rate, basically it refers to the number of people who are leaving the organization. Okay, number of people who are leaving the organization is called as attrition rate. So when the sediments are carried by the river load or wind, Initially when the sediments are created due to weathering, they are very big in size, बड़ा बड़ा size का होता है, अभी breakdown हुआ है, right? When these sediments are transported from one region to another, when they are put to motion, during the motion these sediments itself will collide with each other and gradually it becomes smaller in size, finer in size. That is called as attrition. So what is happening? In case of abrasion, the particles were rubbing against the other surface. In case of attrition, they are rubbing against each other. They are colliding against each other and gradually it is breaking down. ये भी erosion ही है, because this is also in motion. It is breaking down in motion, right? This is erosion. So best example, rivers. You go to upper part of the river. So in the upper stretch of the river, if you observe the sand, river sand होता है ना, it is very coarse, big size sand. The sand will be of bigger size. You go to delta, the sand is very, very fine. Why? During the transportation, its overall size would have decreased. During the transportation, it would have collided against each other. Due to the friction, the size of these sediments will decrease. Decrease in the size, attrition. It is possible both in river as well as wind. Wind में भी हो सकता है, river में भी हो सकता है. Second one, attrition. लिखो. It involves reduction in the size of fragments. It involves reduction in the size of fragments by friction and impact. By friction and impact during transportation. Full stop. It breaks down. It breaks down the load into finer sediments. It breaks down the load into finer sediments. Third, cavitation. Cavitation. Cavities सुना है? कहाँ पर सुना है? So what exactly happens when there are cavities in teeth? Cavity का मतलब क्या है? छोटा छोटा सा holes. Holes, creation of small holes. That is what is cavities. अंदर से hollow जैसे हो जाता है. So cavitation occurs along the river bed. Let's say river is flowing in this manner. Due to the continuous interaction of the river water with the air, it results in the generation of water bubbles. Is that right? पानी में तो bubbles होता है. They are very short-lived, but still you will find continuous generation of water bubbles. So whenever a river is taking turn, when it is taking turn, what happens? The river hits one side. यहाँ पर है ना, it hits the rocks and it takes turn like this. The water hits the rocks on one side and takes the turn. On the other side of the river bank, यहाँ पर देखो, the water flow is very slow. Here the water flow is very fast. Its impact is higher because the water is hitting this bank and is taking turn. But यहाँ पर तो water का impact ज़्यादा नहीं है, because of which water bubbles accumulate in one end. जहां पर ज्यादा वाटर फोर्स नहीं रहता है, इसका जो पानी का जो भी वाटर बबल्स जनरेट होता है ना, एक साइड में एक्यूमुलेट होता है. So it continuously happens. All these water bubbles, they accumulate together at one side and it collapses together. The collapse of the water bubbles releases the energy due to the collapse. It releases energy due to the collapse. It is releasing that energy on the rocks in the surrounding region. That release of energy by the water bubbles impacts the rocks and continuously breaks it down. And it creates cavities. Okay, the continuous impact. You may think, ये तो इतना कम है, water bubble से कैसे break down होगा? Imagine it is happening 24/7, 365 days, एक ही जगह में हो रहा है, continuously. The water is continuously moving, it is generating bubbles and all the bubbles are accumulating in one end. That continuous collapse creates the weakening. मतलब इतना ज़्यादा weaken होता है, मतलब ऐसा cavity होके पूरा टूट जाता है. So it is most commonly observed. Like this. This is cavitation. रिवर साइड में तो मोस्ट कॉमनली दिखता है. विंड की वजह से नहीं, वाटर की वजह से ही होता है. राइट अबाउट दिस. कोलैप्स ऑफ वाटर बबल्स. Collapse of water bubbles in rivers leads to explosion. Leads to explosion, sending a shock wave. Sending a shock wave which tends to disintegrate. Sending shock waves which tends to disintegrate the adjacent rocks. Tends to disintegrate the adjacent rocks. That is cavitation. Fourth, corrosion. वही वाटर बबल्स कोलैप्स होगा. ग्रेजुअली वीकर होगा, ग्रेजुअली कैविटीज होगा ओवर ए लॉन्ग पीरियड ऑफ टाइम. So next one, corrosion. What is corrosion? You might have heard about corrosion. Rusting. Moisture content है तो rust हो जाता है ना. So whenever there is a water flow, this flowing water can also reacts with the surrounding rocks and breaks them down chemically. The chemical breakdown of water. So let's say river water is flowing along those kind of rocks which gets reacts. मतलब ये react करते हैं, पानी से बहुत ज़्यादा easily react कर देता है. Here you don't need any kind of sediments. Just by the moving water itself, it is capable of breaking the other rocks in the surrounding region due to the chemical reaction with it. That is corrosion. Along with other factors, there is also an extra type of erosion. कोरोजन के वजह से इसको ब्रेक डाउन करके कंटिन्यूसली मेल्ट करके लेके चला जाता है. इट विल कंटिन्यूसली रिमूव द सरफेस. दैट इज कोरोजन. कोरोजन के लिए पानी चाहिए. इट कैन नॉट हैपन इन विंड्स. इट इज नॉट पॉसिबल. सो कोरोजन इज एक्टिव ओनली इन रिवर्स एंड कोस्टल रीजन्स. ग्लेशियर्स में भी कोरोजन बहुत कम है. ठीक है, टेम्परेचर बहुत कम रहता है. So majorly in rivers and coastal regions, you will observe corrosion. That is the water reacting chemically with the minerals of the rocks and breaking it down. Corrosion. It involves breaking of rocks by the solvent and chemical action. By the solvent and chemical action of water. Deflation. Next one, deflation. So desert region में क्या होता है? I told you there will be weathered particle, broken down particle. Now that those particles are carried by the winds which are blowing near to the surface. When the winds blow near to the surface, it will lift these particles and take it along with it. When the wind blows near to the surface, it will clear all these sedimentary particles. उसको उठा के लेके जाता है. That is what is abrasion. Sorry, deflation. Deflation. The lifting and carrying action of the wind. Okay, the lifting and carrying action of the wind in desert regions, which will remove these broken sediments. And it will remove these broken sediments from its origin. That is called as deflation. It is the deflation which gives power to the wind. उसके पहले जो विंड था वो नॉर्मल विंड था जिसके अंदर जो सेडिमेंट्स नहीं था. नाउ इट हैज गॉट मिक्स्ड विद द सेडिमेंट्स. नाउ इट हैज बिकम मोर पावरफुल. इट कॉजेस मोर अब्रेजन. डिफ्लेशन के बाद में होगा अब्रेजन. सो वी नीड द सेडिमेंट्स, द सैंड पार्टिकल्स फॉर रबिंग, स्क्रैचिंग, पॉलिशिंग. राइट? दैट इज कॉज्ड बाय डिफ्लेशन. दैट इज टेकन बाय द डिफ्लेशन. Lifting and removal of dust and sand by wind is called as deflation. Hydraulic action. Hydraulic action. So what is hydraulic action? In some regions the rocks are so smooth and soft, a running water is enough to break it down. Even running water carries energy. उसके अंदर भी थोड़ा सा energy रहता है, the kinetic energy. When it hits some of the rocks, it will break down. The breakdown of rocks by the fast running water is called as hydraulic action. Where do we observe hydraulic action? Coastal region. Waves. Waves are continuously hitting the coastal region and it is breaking it down. That is due to hydraulic action. As well as in rivers. Rivers भी ऐसे turn लेते समय it hits the rocks and it causes hydraulic action. Yes. Breaking of rocks. Breaking of rocks by fast moving water. By fast moving water. It's called as hydraulic action. So next, plucking. Plucking का मतलब क्या है? To remove. To remove is plucking. Plucking is a specific type of erosion caused by movement of glaciers. So what are glaciers? Huge blocks of ice which are formed over the mountainous regions. मान लो यहाँ पर माउंटेन साइड्स में ऐसे डिप्रेशन था, यहाँ पर कंटिन्यूसली आइस जम गया and it has become a huge glacier. Okay, बड़ा सा glacier. What is a glacier? Huge block of ice. They're very big block of ice. When a glacier starts to melt, summer में तो बड़ा सा glacier बन गया, winter में तो बड़ा सा glacier बन गया, summer में तो it will start to melt. As it starts to melt, it will start to move down. एक ही बार में तो मेल्ट नहीं होगा, ये तो बहुत बड़ा ब्लॉक है. It will gradually melt, slowly melts. The release of water will keep the glacier in motion. So during the winter when the glacier was actually forming, यहां पर जो भी पत्थर वत्थर था उसके ऊपर सारा आइस बैठ गया था, है ना, जो भी whatever the rocks were there, above that there is a deposition of ice. Now it has become a single body. Now this entire body is moving. What happens to these rocks? It will get removed. It is plucked from its base and it is taken by the glaciers, moving glaciers, and during this process it will break it into pieces. इसको disintegrate कर देता है. That is also erosion. Glacial region में, mountainous region में majorly ऐसे ही होता है. That is how the glaciers are capable of breaking everything in its path. जो भी जिसके ऊपर भी मूव करता है ना, it's a huge block of ice. It will remove the rocks through plucking process. Plucking करके उसको निकाल के उसको तोड़ देता है, continuously break कर देता है. It's called as plucking. No, because these are small scale breakdown. Mass movement is different. Yes. Yes, can say so. Plucking. As the glaciers move, they drag the rocks. They drag the rocks and disintegrates them into smaller pieces. Disintegrates them into smaller pieces. Again, this is not a mains topic. Nobody is going to ask you what is abrasion, what is plucking, what is hydraulic action. Prelims के लिए तो ये चाहिए, है ना? So each of this you should remember. So overall, what is erosion? What are the different types of erosion? ऐसे simple question आ सकता है. So but for next topic we need all of this, all the different types of erosion. So याद है 7 types of erosion. Close your books. एक बार देखते हैं कितना याद है. The rubbing, polishing, scratching action is abrasion. ठीक है. Reduction in the size is ठीक है. चलो. Reduction in the size is attrition. Breakdown by fast moving water is hydraulic action. Lifting action by the wind, deflation. Removal by glacier, plucking. Creation of holes, cavitation. Rubbing, scratching, polishing, abrasion. Abrasion in water, corrosion. Reduction in size, attrition. Creation of holes, cavitation. Dissolving action by water, corrosion. Lifting action by wind, deflation. Fast moving water, hydraulic action. Removal by glacier, plucking. हो गया. अल्फाबेटिकल ऑर्डर में ही दिया है, याद रखना इजी है. Okay, so I have given in the alphabetical order only. Abrasion, attrition, cavitation, corrosion, deflation, hydraulic action and plucking. चलो weathering types बता दो, देखते हैं ऐसे. Breakdown, sorry, accumulation of salt is Haloclasty. Accumulation of water crystal in arid regions. Arid regions. Frost shattering. Glacial regions. Removal of outer cover. Exfoliation. Release of pressure. Then block disintegration, granular disintegration. So chemical weathering. Absorption of water is. Dissolution by water is. Removal and addition of oxygen. Reduction reaction with carbon dioxide. देखो हो गया, इतना सिंपल है. So next one, mass movement. मास मूवमेंट. सो मास मूवमेंट में क्या होता है? इट इज नॉट ए लैंड मास अंडर मूवमेंट. So many of you would have observed most commonly different types of mass movements, which all of them you guys call it as landslide. Okay, most commonly it is called as landslide, but there are different types of mass movement. So landslide hi le lo. This is what is landslide. You can see landslide here. So large section of weathered material is moving. The broken down, degraded, denuded material is moving in large scale. That is what is mass movement. So first of all, there are two important factors which results in mass movement. First one is breakdown. There is a loss of strength in a particular region that may be usually due to weathering. Usually it is due to weathering. Weathering की वजह से large scale breakdown हो गया. The overall there is a large scale breakdown. Okay, first one is there should be large scale breakdown, large scale disintegration. Large scale में होना चाहिए. Second, it should move under the influence of gravity. वो कहां पर होगा? Along the mountain slopes only. It cannot happen along the plain regions. Plain region में तो पूरा flat है, gravity की वजह से तो movement नहीं होगा. Water की वजह से हो सकता है, but that will not be called as mass movement. We need the movement under gravity. It can happen only along the mountain slopes. That's why mass movements happen only along the mountain slopes. Wherever there are mountain slopes, where the weathered material, the broken down material moves under the influence of gravity in large scale, it is called as mass movement. It is also called as mass wasting. Okay, large portion of the land is undergoing wasting. इसको बोलते हैं mass wasting. Most commonly heard mass movement is landslide. But mountain areas में जो भी हो landslide ही बोलते हैं, वो गलत है. Everything is not landslide. We have landslide, earth flow, mud flow, rock slide, rock fall, soil creep, solifluction, ऐसे बहुत सारा types है. ठीक है? So the common thing in all of this is there is degraded, large scale degraded material, large scale broken down material, and it is under the movement of gravity. With or without the presence of water. पानी हो सकता है नहीं हो सकता है, उससे फर्क नहीं पड़ेगा. It may be with or without the presence of water. Such kind of weathered material is under motion is called as mass movement. It's a type of weathering. जैसे जैसे ये movement होगा, पूरा ये इस जगह में पूरा degrade हो गया, breakdown हो गया. This part of exogenetic movement, बाहर से हो रहे. Now, what is causing this loss of strength? इतना ज्यादा weathering या wasting क्यों हुआ है? It may be due to physical weathering, chemical weathering, or maybe due to erosion, or due to the seepage of water, which happens naturally, or maybe due to anthropogenic activities along the mountainous region. पूरा जहां पर vegetation था पूरा हटा दिया हमने. The water seeps in faster in those regions wherever there is no vegetation. The water will flow on the surface. It will flow on the surface faster. It will remove the top layer very easily. It will weaken the top layer. It will break down, weathering होगा, erosion होगा continuously. पूरा ओवरऑल structure weak हो जाएगा. If there are vegetation, it will hold on to this running water. It will slow down the water. उसका speed को कम करता है. It will not have much erosional capacity. It will not break down the mountain slopes. Same is the reason with overgrazing also. Cattle grazing, sheep grazing करवाता है ना. So if it is done in large scale, it will remove all the vegetation. It will make the mountain slopes weaker. ठीक है? And then road construction, railway construction. In the name of roads, railways, bridges, dams, हमने पूरा mountain sides को पूरा excavate करते हैं. We will excavate, will reduce the strength, जिसके वजह से पूरा side weak हो गया, पूरा collapse होने का chances होता है. So all such movement which is called as mass movement naturally होगा, but accentuated by the anthropogenic activities. So such kind of mass movements are most common in high mountains. For example, Himalayas. Himalayas में सबसे ज्यादा रहते हैं. Why? Because यहाँ पर extra factors है. Because these are very young fold mountains. They are very tall mountains. Steep slope made up of sedimentary rocks. High precipitation. Okay, so जिसकी वजह से weathering बहुत ज्यादा रेट में होगा, so breakdown भी बहुत ज्यादा हो जाएगा. And in addition to this, there are frequent earthquakes. Earthquakes की वजह से weaken हो जाएगा ना. Natural cause से ज्यादा तो anthropogenic causes ही है. जो भी हिमालयन स्टेट्स है, उत्तराखंड, हिमाचल, जम्मू कश्मीर, लद्दाख, हर जगह में इन द नेम ऑफ डेवलपमेंट वी आर ट्राइंग टू कंस्ट्रक्ट रोड, रेलवे. ये सब तो अच्छी बात है, बट ठीक से नहीं कर रहे हैं. वी आर नॉट डूइंग इन ए साइंटिफिक मैनर. दैट कॉजेस सच काइंड ऑफ ब्रेक डाउन. इट इज कॉल्ड एज मास मूवमेंट. राइट द डेफिनेशन. The weathered material moving downhill slopes, under the influence of gravity, with or without the assistance of running water, with or without the assistance of running water, is called as mass movement. So we have a doubt. What is waterfalls called in terms of erosion? See, waterfall is not a process. What we are discussing, there are different processes. Weathering is a process, erosion is a process, mass movement is a process. Waterfall is not a process. Right? It's a feature related to riverine topography. Riverine topography का एक part है, which is the result of other weathering and erosion. Weathering and erosion के वजह से ये हुआ है. It is not a type of weathering or not a type of erosion. If you are asking me, the water which is falling down is impacting the rocks and it is creating what? It is creating hydraulic action. The fast moving water hits the rocks and breaks down the rocks. Okay, it is not the waterfall as such. Okay, so we'll discuss about the different types of mass movements. Okay, there are overall few categories, few examples. We'll discuss about this in the next class. So in the next class we'll talk about this, and then we'll start with different types of landforms.